What would you do if your work kept vanishing from your desk? Like literally disappearing overnight? Reports you spent hours putting together? Spreadsheets you triple-checked? Analysis packets you stayed late to finish? Just gone. And then, somehow, somebody else is getting praised for that exact same work the very next morning. Yeah, that's what happened to today's poster, and honestly, the way he handled it? Chef's kiss. Stick around because this one is a wild ride from start to finish. And the ending, oh man, the ending is satisfying. If you're new here, welcome to Kelly. We read the most unbelievable real stories from the internet, so you don't have to scroll for hours. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's get into it. The coworker who stole documents off my desk. Alright, so I, 28 male, have been working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized regional accounting firm for about 3 years now. The firm handles a mix of corporate clients, mostly mid-range businesses, some municipal contracts, a few bigger fish we landed in the last couple of years. It's not glamorous work by any means, but I'm good at it. I genuinely enjoy digging into numbers, building models, and putting together reports that actually mean something to the people reading them. There's something satisfying about taking a wall of raw data and turning it into something a client can actually use to make decisions. I know that sounds nerdy, and I fully accept that about myself. I'm not the loudest guy in the room. Never have been. I show up, I do my work, I go home. Pretty simple. I don't volunteer for the social committee. I don't do karaoke at the holiday party. I don't send reply all emails with jokes in them. I'm just the quiet guy who does solid work and keeps his head down. And for a long time, I thought that was enough. So for context, our office is set up in this kind of open plan style with clusters of desks. No real cubicle walls, just low dividers that barely come up to your elbows when you're sitting down. You can see everybody and everybody can see you. My desk is near the back corner by the window, which I actually like because it's quieter and I can focus without people walking past me every 30 seconds. The downside is that it's also a little isolated, meaning people don't always notice what's happening back there. About a year and a half ago, the firm hired this guy I'm going to call the Chameleon. And before you ask, yes, that nickname is extremely earned. This guy had a gift. Not for accounting or analysis or anything actually useful, mind you. His gift was making people like him. From day one, the Chameleon was everybody's best friend. He'd bring in donuts on Mondays. He'd remember your kid's name. He'd ask about your weekend plans and actually seem interested. He was charming in that effortless way that some people just are. You know the type. And honestly, I liked him too at first. We grabbed lunch together pretty regularly, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with a few other people from the department. He'd stop by my desk to chat about whatever game was on the night before, or to complain about the coffee in the break room, or to ask what I was working on. That last part is important, and I'll come back to it later. But at the time, it just seemed like normal coworker conversation. He seemed like a genuinely good dude. I thought we were friends. Real friends. Not just work proximity associates. And yeah, I know that's a thing, but I really thought this was different. The problem started slow. Maybe 8 months ago. I'd come in on a Monday morning and a report I'd left on my desk Friday afternoon would be gone. Not in my drawer, not on the printer, not in my bag. Just vanished. The first time it happened, I figured I must have moved it and forgotten. I reprinted it, submitted it, moved on with my life. No big deal. Then it happened again 2 weeks later. Different report, same situation. Left it on my desk at the end of the day, came back the next morning, and it was gone. This time I asked around. Did the cleaning crew move stuff? Did somebody grab it by mistake? Nobody knew anything. I reprinted it again. Third time, about a month after that. This time, it was a full quarterly analysis packet I'd spent probably 15 hours on. Detailed projections, variance breakdowns, client-specific recommendations. This wasn't something I could just reprint, because a lot of the notes and annotations were handwritten on the printed copy. I had to redo significant chunks of the work. I was frustrated, but I still wasn't thinking sabotage at that point. I was thinking I was losing my mind a little bit. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Around this same time, the Chameleon started getting a lot of attention from management. Our regional director, a guy named Phil, kept bringing up the Chameleon's excellent work in team meetings, talking about how impressed the clients were with his analysis, how thorough his reports were, how he was really stepping up. And I'm sitting there like, Wait, some of those phrases Phil was using to describe the chameleon's work sounded really familiar. Like uncomfortably familiar. Because they sounded like my work. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I mean, we work in the same department. We handle similar clients. It's possible that two people could produce similar quality work independently, right? That's what I kept telling myself anyway. The fourth time a document disappeared was when I finally stopped giving the benefit of the doubt. It was a comprehensive risk assessment for one of our biggest municipal clients. I had been working on it for over a week. I left the final draft on my desk on a Thursday evening because I wanted to do one more review Friday morning before submitting it. Friday morning, gone. Completely gone. And then, that same Friday afternoon, Phil sends out an email to the whole department praising the chameleon for his outstanding risk assessment for, you guessed it, that exact same municipal client. The one I'd been working on. The one that had disappeared from my desk overnight. I felt sick. Like actually physically sick. Not just because my work was being stolen, but because I'd trusted this guy. I'd considered him a friend. We'd talked about our lives, our goals, our frustrations with the job. And the whole time he was apparently sneaking over to my desk and taking my work to present as his own. But here's the thing about me. I don't blow up. I don't confront people in the heat of the moment and make a scene. That's just not how I operate. My dad always used to say, don't react, respond. And I've carried that with me my whole life. When something goes wrong, I get quiet and I get strategic. I start thinking 3 moves ahead instead of 1 move behind. And that's exactly what I did. So this is where Nate shifts from confused victim to full-on detective mode. And I gotta say, the patience this guy showed? Most people would have marched straight over to the chameleon's desk and caused a whole scene. But Nate understood something that a lot of people miss in these situations. When you're dealing with somebody who's charming and well-liked and has basically everybody fooled, you can't just throw accusations around. You need proof. Cold, hard, undeniable proof. Because without it, you're just the jealous coworker trying to tear down the golden boy. And that never ends well. I spent the weekend thinking about this, running through scenarios, and I decided I was going to set a trap. But I needed to be smart about it, because if I was wrong, if this really was just some bizarre coincidence, I didn't want to ruin a friendship and make myself look crazy in the process. Step 1, I bought a small camera. Nothing fancy, just a basic wildlife camera, the kind people use to monitor bird feeders or catch animals getting into their trash. It was small enough to sit on my bookshelf between a couple of reference manuals without being obvious. Wide enough angle to capture my entire desk area. Motion activated with a timestamp on every frame. Cost me like $40. Step 2, I created a document specifically designed to be bait. It looked like a preliminary analysis for a client account I was actually working on, but I made some very specific and intentional changes. Things that would be obviously wrong to anyone who actually understood the underlying data, but that would look perfectly legitimate to someone just skimming it or copying it wholesale. I also added a few unique phrases and formatting choices that I'd never used before. Things that would basically act as a fingerprint if they showed up in someone else's work. Step 3. I left the bait document on my desk on a Wednesday evening. Prominently placed, clearly labeled, impossible to miss if you were looking for something to grab. Then I waited. Thursday morning, I came in early. The document was gone. My heart was pounding, but I kept it together. I sat down, logged in, and went about my morning like nothing was wrong. At lunch, I casually checked the chameleon's desk when he stepped away. And there it was, my bait document sitting right there in his folder. He hadn't even bothered to retype it. He'd literally just taken my printed copy and put his name on a cover sheet. But I still didn't say anything, not yet, because I wanted the camera footage too. That evening, I retrieved the camera and checked the recording. And there it was, clear as day. Time-stamped at 11:47 p.m. on Wednesday night. The chameleon, walking into our department area, he must have come back to the office after hours. Maybe said he forgot something, who knows? Going straight to my desk, picking up the document, flipping through it briefly, and walking away with it. The whole thing took maybe 90 seconds. I have never felt so vindicated and so betrayed at the same time in my life. It's a weird combination of emotions. Like I was right and I almost wish I wasn't. Because being right meant that someone I'd trusted, someone I'd shared lunch with and talked about life with for over a year, had been deliberately and systematically screwing me over the entire time. And the thing that really got under my skin? All those times he'd stopped by my desk asking what I was working on. He wasn't making conversation. He was scouting. He was figuring out what was worth taking. And here's where things could have gone sideways real fast. Nate has the evidence. He has the camera footage, the bait document, the pattern of missing work. He could have gone straight to management right then. But watch what he does next. The guy basically builds an entire case file before he makes a move. This is the kind of thing where you can tell somebody really thought it through, you know? He didn't let the anger drive the bus. The anger was there for sure, but it was riding in the back seat. I spent the next few days putting everything together. I made a timeline of every document that had gone missing over the past 8 months. I cross-referenced those dates with the chameleon's submissions to management. And wouldn't you know it, every single one of my missing documents lined up with one of his praised deliverables within 24 to 48 hours. Every single one. I pulled up my own digital files, drafts, version histories, email chains where I discussed the work with colleagues or clients before it was completed by the chameleon. I had metadata showing my files were created days or weeks before his supposed submissions. I even found a couple instances where he'd submitted my work but hadn't caught all my handwritten notes on the printouts, so you could literally see my handwriting in the margins of documents he was claiming as his own. Then I put together a clean, organized summary of everything. The timeline, the camera footage, the bait document comparison, the metadata, the handwriting evidence, all of it. I put it in a folder, a physical folder, because I wasn't about to leave digital breadcrumbs that could get tampered with. And I requested a meeting with Phil, our regional director, and Sandra from HR. The meeting was on a Monday morning. I walked in, sat down, and laid it all out. Calmly, professionally. No emotion, no accusations of character, just facts and evidence. I showed them the camera footage first because I figured the visual impact would set the tone. Phil's face went through about 6 different expressions in 10 seconds. Sandra just kept writing notes. When I finished presenting everything, there was this long silence. Phil leaned back in his chair and said something like, This is a lot to take in." Sandra asked me a few clarifying questions. When exactly I'd set up the camera, whether anyone else knew about it, that kind of thing. And then they said they'd need to investigate and get back to me, which I expected. These things don't get resolved in one meeting, especially at a firm that's careful about liability and process. But here's where things got messy. Because apparently, and I still don't know exactly how this happened, word got out about the camera. My best guess is someone in HR mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone else. Because within 2 days, half the office knew I'd set up surveillance at my desk. And the reaction was not what I expected. Instead of being outraged that the chameleon had been stealing people's work, well, my work specifically, a solid chunk of my coworkers were outraged at me for setting up a camera in what they called a shared workspace. The argument was that I had violated everyone's privacy by recording in a common area without consent. People who I'd worked alongside for years were suddenly giving me the cold shoulder. A couple of people actually confronted me about it, saying it was creepy and a breach of trust. And the chameleon? Oh, he played this brilliantly. He leaned right into the victim angle. Started telling people he felt violated and unsafe. Said he couldn't believe a friend would spy on him like that. He never denied taking the documents, not directly, but he reframed the whole conversation to be about my methods rather than his actions. Classic deflection. I mean, honestly, if the guy put half as much effort into actually doing his job as he did into manipulating people, he'd probably be running the department by now. It was a rough couple of weeks. I won't sugarcoat that. Coming into work every day knowing that people were side-eyeing you, whispering about you, treating you like the bad guy when you're literally the victim. It wears on you. I'd walk into the break room and conversations would stop. I'd send emails and they'd go unanswered for days when they used to get replies within hours. One guy I'd been friendly with for 2 years literally got up and moved to a different table when I sat down in the cafeteria. That one stung, I'm not gonna lie. There were days I sat at my desk and just stared at my screen for 10 minutes before I could actually start working because I was so frustrated and demoralized. I questioned myself constantly. Should I have just confronted the chameleon privately? Should I have gone to management without the camera footage and just used the document trail? Was I wrong to record in the office? But every time I went down that road, I came back to the same conclusion. Without the camera footage, it would have been my word against his, and he was the office golden boy. Nobody was going to take my side on accusations alone, but I kept my head down. I kept doing my work, and I waited for the process to play out. Man, this part of the story always gets me. The whole office turning on the person who was literally being robbed. Think about that for a second. A guy has his work physically stolen from his desk, repeatedly, by someone who then takes credit for it to get ahead. And when the victim catches the thief, he's the one people are mad at? That is wild. But unfortunately, it's also super common in these kinds of situations. People get more upset about how the wrongdoing was uncovered than they do about the wrongdoing itself. It's like getting mad at the security camera for catching a shoplifter. The camera didn't commit the crime, people. Anyway, let's see how management handled this because honestly, they actually got it right for once. About 3 weeks after my initial meeting with Phil and Sandra, I got called back in. This time, it was Phil, Sandra, and the firm's managing partner, a guy named Lawrence, who I'd maybe spoken to twice in my entire time at the company. Having the managing partner in the room told me this had gone way above where it started. Phil did most of the talking. He said that after my initial report, they'd conducted a thorough internal review. They'd compared my digital file histories with the Chameleon's submitted work and found what they described as overwhelming consistencies, meaning the work was clearly mine. The timestamps on my files predated his submissions in every single case. In several instances, formatting artifacts, unique phrasings, and even my handwritten margin notes were present in documents the Chameleon had claimed as his own work. They'd also reviewed the camera footage and determined that it was captured in a common work area with no reasonable expectation of privacy. It's literally an open-plan office with no walls. What privacy are we talking about here? So they concluded that my recording did not violate any company policy or, as far as they could determine, any applicable laws. Sandra specifically mentioned that the firm's employee handbook actually permitted personal security measures for protecting company property, which my work documents qualified as. Then Phil told me that the Chameleon had been terminated, effective immediately. He said it with this tone that made it clear he was personally embarrassed that it had gone on for so long under his watch. I think the fact that Phil had been publicly praising the Chameleon's work, my work, in team meetings, made the whole thing hit different for him. He'd basically been an unwitting accomplice to the whole scheme. Lawrence, the managing partner, then spoke up. He said something I'll never forget. He said, "We owe you an apology, not just for what happened, but for how long it took us to see it. You shouldn't have had to become your own investigator." I appreciated that more than I can really put into words. Having someone that senior acknowledge not just the theft, but the systemic failure that allowed it to happen, that meant something. Then they told me about the promotion. See, there had been an open senior analyst position that both the Chameleon and I had been informally considered for. That was actually a big part of why the Chameleon had been stealing my work in the first place. He was trying to build a track record that would get him the promotion. Well, with him gone and with the firm now having a very clear picture of whose work had actually been driving results for the past several months, they offered the position to me. I accepted. Obviously. I mean, come on. After everything I'd been through, there was exactly zero chance I was turning that down. The pay bump was significant, about a 22% increase plus better benefits, and a small team I'd be leading. But more than the money, it felt like recognition. Like the firm was saying, "We see you. We see what you actually contribute." After months of watching someone else get credit for my work, while I sat there quietly wondering if I was going crazy, that acknowledgement was honestly the best part. I remember driving home after that meeting and just sitting in my car in the parking garage for a few minutes. Not celebrating exactly, just breathing. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually take a full breath without that knot in my chest. Okay, I need to talk about something here because I think it's really important. The way Nate handled this entire situation is kind of a masterclass in how to deal with workplace conflict when you're the underdog. Think about all the ways this could have gone wrong. He could have confronted the Chameleon directly, which probably would have just resulted in the Chameleon denying everything, and then being more careful about covering his tracks. He could have gone to management with just suspicions and no evidence, which probably would have gotten him labeled as paranoid or jealous, especially since the Chameleon was so well liked. He could have lost his temper and done something stupid that would have gotten him fired. But he didn't do any of that. He stayed calm. He gathered evidence methodically, and he presented his case in a way that made it impossible to ignore or dismiss. That takes a level of self-control and strategic thinking that honestly, I'm not sure I would have in the same situation. I'd probably be flipping desks. But that's why Nate got the promotion, and I'm sitting here reading stories on the internet. Just kidding. Sort of. Anyway, let's get to the aftermath. Final update. So it's been about 4 months since everything went down, and I figured I'd give an update since a lot of people asked. First off, the job is going well. Like, really well. The senior analyst role has been everything I hoped it would be, and then some. I've got a small team now, 3 junior analysts, and I've made it a point to create a work environment where everybody gets credit for what they actually do. Every report, every analysis, every project. Names go on the work. Proper attribution for everything. I refuse to let what happened to me happen to anyone on my team. That's non-negotiable for me. The team dynamic is good. My junior analysts are sharp and motivated, and I think they appreciate that I'm not the kind of manager who takes credit for their contributions. We've actually become a pretty tight unit. One of them, a guy named Colin, who started about 2 months before I got promoted, told me recently that he'd heard about the whole chameleon situation before he was hired, and almost didn't take the job because of it. But he said the way the firm handled the resolution, and specifically the way I was running my team, changed his mind. That was really nice to hear. As for the office dynamics, yeah, that took some time to smooth over. For the first month or so after the chameleon was fired, things were kind of awkward. Some of the people who'd given me a hard time about the camera were clearly uncomfortable. A few of them eventually came up to me and, without exactly apologizing, acknowledged that they'd been wrong about the situation. One woman from the administrative team actually did fully apologize. She said she'd been caught up in the mob mentality and felt terrible about how she'd treated me. I respected that a lot because it takes guts to actually own up to that kind of thing. There are still a couple of people who I think will always see me as the camera guy, regardless of the context. And you know what? That's fine. I've made my peace with it. I know what happened. Management knows what happened. The people whose opinions actually matter know the truth. I can't control how everyone perceives every situation, and I've stopped trying to. Phil, my regional director, has been noticeably different with me since everything came out. More attentive, more engaged, more willing to hear my input on things that he might have previously dismissed or not thought to ask me about. I think there's some guilt there, honestly. He spent months praising stolen work to my face without realizing it, and I think that eats at him. He's never said that directly, but you can kind of tell. He's been a good advocate for me and my team since the promotion, though, so I don't hold any grudges. I actually ran into the chameleon about 6 weeks ago. This is the part a lot of people were asking about, so I'll give you the details. I was at a coffee shop near my apartment on a Saturday morning, just reading and minding my own business. He walked in, saw me, and there was this moment where we just looked at each other. I could see him debating whether to say something or just pretend he didn't see me. He came over. He looked different, a little thinner, a little less put together than his usual polished office self. He said, "Hey, Nate." I said, "Hey." I know, riveting dialogue. But what exactly are you supposed to say to someone who systematically stole your work for months? He sat down across from me without really being invited, which, looking back, is pretty on brand for him, and said he wanted to explain. He said the pressure to perform had gotten to him, and he'd made some bad decisions. He said he'd been struggling financially, and the promotion would have changed everything for him. He said he was sorry. I listened. I didn't interrupt him. When he was done, I told him that I understood that pressure exists and that everyone has moments where they feel desperate, but that what he did wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a calculated, repeated pattern of behavior that went on for months. I told him that he didn't just steal documents, he stole my credibility, my reputation, and months of my professional growth. And I told him that while I didn't wish him ill, I also wasn't going to sit there and tell him it was okay, because it wasn't. He nodded, said he understood, and left. Didn't finish his coffee order, just walked out. We haven't spoken since, and I don't expect we will. Honestly, I don't know how I feel about that interaction even now. Part of me feels like I should have been angrier. Part of me feels like I should have been more forgiving. But I think what I said was honest, and at this point in my life, honest is more important to me than either of those extremes. The whole experience taught me a few things that I think are worth sharing for anyone going through something similar. 1. Document everything. I cannot stress this enough. If something feels off at work, start keeping records. Save emails, screenshot conversations. Keep a log of what you submit and when. The reason my case was airtight is because I had receipts for everything. If I'd just gone to management and said, I think he's stealing my work, it would have been my word against his, and he was a lot more popular than me. The evidence is what made the difference. 2. Don't let the court of public opinion dictate your actions. When the office turned on me about the camera, it would have been really easy to back down, apologize, and let the whole thing blow over. But I knew I was right, and I knew the evidence supported me. Sometimes doing the right thing means being uncomfortable for a while. That's just the cost. 3. Be patient. The process took weeks. There were days where I genuinely wondered if anything was going to come of it. But institutional processes, as slow and frustrating as they are, exist for a reason. If I'd tried to force a faster resolution, I probably would have made mistakes or come across as aggressive, which would have undermined my case. 4. And this is maybe the most important one. Pay attention to who people actually are, not just who they present themselves as. The chameleon was charismatic and likable, and fun to be around. He was also dishonest, manipulative, and perfectly willing to throw a friend under the bus for career advancement. Those things can coexist in the same person, and if you're not paying attention, the charm will blind you to the rest. I'm in a much better place now. The promotion, the team, the vindication, all of it. But I'd be lying if I said the whole thing didn't leave a mark. I'm more careful now about what I leave on my desk. Basically nothing, ever. I'm more guarded about who I trust at work. And every now and then, when I stay late and the office gets quiet, I still get this little twinge of paranoia, like some instinct telling me to check that everything is still where I left it. But I'm working on that. And overall, life is good. I'll also add a 5th lesson I didn't mention in the original post because I was still processing it at the time. Be prepared for the social fallout, even when you're right. Being correct and being popular are two completely different things, and sometimes they're at odds with each other. If I could go back, I wouldn't change what I did, but I would have mentally prepared myself better for the backlash. It caught me off guard, and that made an already difficult situation even harder. Thanks for reading, and if you're dealing with something similar at your job, trust your gut, get your evidence, and don't let anybody gaslight you into thinking you're the problem when you're the one being wronged. And that, my friends, is why you always keep receipts. Always. I don't care if it's at work, in a relationship, whatever the situation is. If something feels off, start documenting. Because Nate would still be sitting in that back corner desk watching the chameleon take credit for his work if he hadn't taken matters into his own hands. What really gets me about this story is how the chameleon played the victim card after getting caught. Like, you're literally stealing someone's physical documents off their desk in the middle of the night, but somehow you're the one who feels violated because you got recorded doing it? Make it make sense. You can't, because it doesn't. That's manipulation 101. When you get caught, redirect the outrage. And it almost worked too. If management hadn't actually done their jobs and reviewed the evidence objectively, the chameleon might have gotten away with it. I also want to shout out Phil and the managing partner Lawrence for handling this the right way. We see so many stories on this channel where management drops the ball, sides with a popular person, or sweeps the whole thing under the rug. These guys actually looked at the evidence, made the right call, and then went a step further by acknowledging that the system had failed Nate. That apology from Lawrence. You shouldn't have had to become your own investigator. That's accountability, and it's rare. And can we talk about Nate's interaction with the chameleon at the coffee shop? Because I think the way he responded says everything about who he is as a person. He didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He didn't pretend everything was fine. He just told the truth. What you did hurt me, it wasn't a mistake, and I'm not going to pretend it was okay. That is emotional maturity right there. That's a guy who knows who he is and doesn't need to perform for anyone. And I think the chameleon knew it too, because he just left. No argument, no pushback, no trying to charm his way out of it. For once in his life, the charm wasn't going to work, and he knew it. I also want to highlight something Nate said in his update that I think is really powerful. The part about creating a work culture on his team where everyone gets proper credit. That's a guy who took something painful and turned it into something meaningful. He didn't just survive a bad situation. He used it to become a better leader. And his team is better off because of what he went through. That doesn't make what happened okay, but it does make the outcome something more than just a revenge story. It's a growth story, too. Now I want to hear from you guys. Have you ever caught a coworker stealing your work? How did you handle it? Did management actually do something about it? Or did they pull the classic, let's all just move forward nonsense? Drop your stories in the comments. I read every single one of them, and some of your experiences are honestly more wild than the stories I cover on this channel. If you made it this far in the video, thank you. Seriously, this channel has been growing like crazy lately, and it's because of you guys showing up, watching, commenting, and sharing these videos with your friends. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We post new stories multiple times a week, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Hit that like button if you think Nate handled this like a boss. Hit that subscribe button if you're new. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.